Hi, I'm Rajesh Kasirangan, and on my right, wait, on my left, on my right, there is Gabi Serrato Marks. We are so excited to have you all here for our first ClimateX Unhangout webinar. I am an alum of MIT, one of the co-founders of ClimateX, and we are super happy to be here in the Office of Digital Learning at MIT, one of our fantastic collaborators here. We have a room full of people, and we are going to be starting our Unhangout in a few minutes. Just a couple of logistical issues. If you have any questions, please ask us on the Unhangout chat stream, which I'm sure most of you are looking at. If you have any other issues, so here's how it's going to go. We're going to have Gabi talk for a few minutes. Then we're going to move into the breakout rooms, which will be Google Hangout sessions. Then we're going to come back and Gabi is going to say a few more words, and that will be it. And remember that this is totally experimental. It's driven by your questions and your thoughts. So please keep bugging us throughout this on Hangout. And that is how it's going to be great. And we want you to be thinking about this as a peer-to-peer, jointly created climate action experiment. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gabi.
Cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Yeah, like Rajesh said, it's a little bit of an experiment, so we're really looking forward to trying this out. So my name's Gabi. I'm a second-year PhD student in the MIT Hui Joint Program in Oceanography. And I mostly studied climate change in the past, but as part of everything that I'm learning in graduate school, I'm also studying current modern climate change. So it's really exciting to be here to sort of help facilitate and moderate. This isn't going to be a lecture, but more just to talk with you guys about the ideas that you have about climate change. So the idea that I had to talk about today is how we can use big data to both address and assess the impact of climate change. So there's a lot of talk now about big data. I'm sure everyone in this room could give us a different definition, but my idea is just to think about the fact that as climate scientists, we really want more data. We want more information to present how climate is currently changing in our world and the whole planet. And so my question, as a challenge question to you all, is what data do we need that we don't have, and what data do we need more of? The third question, or sort of third part of that, is how can we get that data? So do people want to do more of their own citizen science, which we'll also be talking about next week? Do people want to be pushing that out to scientists at big research institutions or small community colleges around the country, around the whole world even? Where are we going to get that data? So in short, how can we use big data to address and assess the impact of modern climate change? I think now I'll give you a couple examples of the data that I'm thinking of. So one is there's been some news about how coffee crops are declining because of climate change. So it'd be really interesting to see how we can think about what is the current crop yield like in a state, in a town, or even in a country, and broader than that, in a whole region. And what can that tell us about the past change? So, for example, is this year's crop going to be a lot smaller than last year's? And why is that? If we look at longer term trends, what can we see from that? That's just one example. A couple others would be sea surface temperature. That's a really common one that climate scientists like to look at, is what is the actual ocean temperature all around the globe. That's sort of a more, that's less like citizen science, I think, a lot of times. That's more of like a huge operation kind of science. But those are just a couple examples of things that I'm interested in and things that I think are currently being talked about. But I'm really interested to hear what you all want and what you are all interested in to think about for big data and how we can use that. So I think at this point we'll break up into our breakout sessions. So there's going to be a place where you can click in to your breakout rooms very shortly, and you can go into whatever room you would like. It's totally random, and hopefully we can have some good discussions. Are they now open? Yes, they're now open. So you can now choose a room. There will be facilitators in each room who can help us with the discussion. Just to reiterate one more time, how can we use big data to address and assess the impact of climate change? Makes sense. Hopefully if people have questions, they're asking in the chat. Perfect. So I'm now going to stop the broadcast. Okay. See you for recording, and let's go live.
Broadcast. All right.
We're live again from the...
Live in Cambridge. This is ClimateX.
So I think now we're just going to go over a couple of the things that we went over in the breakout rooms, because I wasn't in any of them, so I'm really curious to hear what you guys came up with. And we actually have Rajesh, who was in team, what
Red.
team are you? Team Red, to go over a little bit about what you guys talked about.
Yeah, I actually had two fantastic interlocutors, both British, but one in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and one in Oxford, England. So Robert and Helen, thank you so much. There are some great ideas that came up. Robert actually said, big data is great, but modeling, well, how are you going to model all that?
Yep.
So maybe you want to talk about it.
Yeah, so I think especially in the paleoclimate community, we talk a lot about how we need all this data from the past to understand the present. And the reason that I always think that we need that information from the past is so that we can improve current models of past climate change and of present climate change, what's happening right now. Because models, they don't just run on their own, they run with a lot of inputs about what has happened in the past and what we can predict for the future. And yeah, I think modeling is a really good place to put all that data, because you can have 1,000 years of temperature data or even 10 years of daily data, and that's a huge amount of information. But if you don't really have anywhere to put that or anything to use that for, what's the point? So yeah, I think modeling is super interesting, and it's something that I think is starting to expand to sort of all aspects of science, that we aren't just, it's not just test tubes anymore. There's a lot of really interesting work going on about how we can use, even quantum computing, machine learning to start to think about that data. So yeah, it's interesting.
Okay. So here's a follow-up question.
Okay.
Sorry, you're on the spot.
I'm ready.
Okay, which is that, because when individual scientists or even small groups do modeling, it's idiosyncratic, right? Like I choose parameters that I like.
That you like, right?
And whatnot. And when you talk about big data, and especially if you talk to big engineering companies, a lot of their work is in building systems, right? So that the different pieces talk to each other consistently. So we don't need just one model or 5 models. We need a kind of a modeling system that is coherent across the different kinds of data that we're collecting. So
yeah, there's something called CMIP5, and I'm forgetting right now while we're live what it stands for, but it's this coupled model intercomparison project. That's what it's called. So where people run tons of different simulations with not necessarily the same parameters, but with the same kind of guiding principles, and they put it all together, and that's part of what goes into the IPCC reports on what's currently happening with climate change. So I agree that collaboration is really what we need to figure out how to bring those together, because if my model says one thing and yours says another, how do we assess whose is right? How do we assess whose is most accurate, and where's the least error, and how do we decide that? Yeah. And I think that's something that we still are working on for sure. But it's interesting to think about. Hopefully someone in this group will come up with a solution, right?
Yeah.
But, maybe that would be a good challenge question, is how to make sure that models can talk to each other, how to make sure that different institutions who are doing these computationally intensive models can make sure that they're working together across institutions.
Great. Yeah. I wonder if either the spreadsheet there or the window has more questions. Yeah.
Yeah. How can I do local data collection?
Local data collection. Okay. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit next week with the citizen science aspect of things. But one thing that I always sort of like to think about is that your eyes are some of the best data collection, right? So you can look and observe and see what you can find. And you can, if you realize, wow, these birds that I'm seeing every day now, I didn't used to see these before. I used to see them when I visit my grandmother down in South Carolina, and now I'm seeing them in Massachusetts, or whatever it is that you're seeing. Those things are important to notice. And even now, I think we're hearing, it's been in the news recently, that people aren't talking to each other about climate science and about climate change. There was just an article that was posted, it went on the ClimateX Twitter, but that if you're doing local data collection, either on your own, just observing like I was just talking about, that then talking to other people about it is really important. Thank you. We have a question here. I have no idea how I'm going to answer, but we'll get at that in a minute. But I think that local data collection, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be like grabbing a water sample and analyzing it yourself in your kitchen. I don't know how you'd even go about that. I'd love to hear if someone has an idea. But I think it can sort of thinking broadly about what data collection can look like is really important.
I think Jeff will definitely talk about water
next week.
samples.
Yeah,
so,
and how to do those analyses is really interesting. We have a couple questions here. Are agricultural monitors being fed into climate models? Yeah, that's not something I know for sure. I don't do my own climate modeling. I think it depends on the climate model itself, and I think on where you're working. But I would love to see that happen. I think it's really important for the people who are in like the agriculture industry and the people who are in sort of the more science side of that can bring their knowledge together, because that's going to be really, really helpful. But I don't actually know if they're currently being fed into climate models. Maybe comment in the chat function if you already know about that, and prove to me that I'm wrong or that I already know. One is, how do we pool what we measure? I think that's an awesome, that's another question. I think that's a really good idea for this ClimateX Groups Challenge community, or the Climate Collabs Challenge. I'm not sure what system we'll be using, but coming up with a proposal, or even just a very simple idea that other people can help you build out for how we pool data together in our citizen science, in our own personal lives. How do we put all of that data that we're collecting into something that's helpful? Who do we send it to? Where do we put it? All those questions. I don't know of any current solutions to that.
No, and I think that that's the kind of challenge that we definitely want to take up.
That's what this ClimateX is built
That's
for.
That's what ClimateX is built for.
To think about those.
Is to start, because again, we can't build everything.
Right.
And even if we build an interface, it needs to be populated by data that people collect on their own. So, so absolutely.
Yeah. Another question here, is what if we put monitors in schools? Yeah. So one question I would have to add to that is, what kind of monitors? Do you want to know air quality? Indoor air quality is a really big issue. You hear a lot about outdoor air quality, but what we have inside is the air that we're breathing for most of the day. So do we want to know what the kids are breathing? Do we want to know what's in the water that they're drinking? Do we want to know how many kids are coming to school and how that correlates to temperature? Like there's so many questions you could ask. And I think that having kids answer those questions themselves would be a really cool combination of education.
That would be fantastic. I mean, can you imagine that, say, middle schoolers coming up with a project that says every degree rise in temperature is so many fewer kids in school that day?
I don't know where that would come from. That would be really cool. But yeah, monitoring that. There are schools I know of in our local area that have so much lead in the pipes in the water that you can't actually drink the water that's coming out of what look like water fountains or out of the sinks. And so the sort of answering those questions of what is actually happening right now. We don't even know in some places. So putting monitors for that information, that's a health hazard, but also just for, how much energy are we using to cool the school? How much time are we spending shoveling snow when there's snowstorm after snowstorm after snowstorm? And having the kids analyze that, I think, would be really cool. It's a nice way
That
to
would
get
be an
them.
interesting winter project, right?
Yeah.
Which is how many minutes did you spend shoveling,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
How much longer did it take you to get to school? How much school did you miss because of these massive storms that are happening? Yeah. We got some really great questions coming in. So keep asking in the chat, please. We're doing our best to answer them all. I hope you guys enjoyed your breakout conversations, because now we're getting to see some of what came up. So I have this that says that BBC collects data via app.
that must be Robert, because he was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Robert said that in England, BBC actually
Oh, yeah, I see this.
encourages people to send in local conditions via an app.
That's like my dream. That sounds so cool. I would love to. I'm going to have to download that app and tell them I want that. Sorry. They have a similar thing for earthquakes. Sometimes the USGS will say, it's something like, do you feel it? Did you feel it? And you can report if you felt the shaking from the earthquake. And that actually gives them a better sense of how far that seismic activity went.
Right.
Great. Did you feel a slight shaking? Did you have things falling off your shelves? So yeah, I love when those apps that we use on our phone every day can contribute to something that feels bigger. So that's really cool. Yeah, I would love to get some feedback about what you thought about this session. What was good about it? What was bad about it? Especially what you think that we can change for the future, because this is going to be an 8-week series.
Yes, so we have 7 more to go after this one.
And it's, like we said a couple times, it is an experiment, and we are figuring out how everything works. So it'd be really cool to hear what you guys think would be good for the future. Do you think we should have more breakout rooms, fewer breakout rooms, anything like that? Please add them into that chat.
Or if there's a way to collect questions beforehand. I mean, anything that you think will improve the experience.
Cool. Yeah, and I think if you don't have a chance to type in your feedback right now, we'd love to hear more about your thoughts and your ideas, especially because I didn't get to hear everyone talking in the breakout sessions. It'd be really cool if people could comment with a little summary about what they think after, and reflecting maybe after you eat lunch if you're in the East Coast time zone, about what you think, and we can do that on the ClimateX website.
Yes.
So if people sign up, you can post either as an individual post and people can comment. I think we'll set that up so you guys can comment on it. Or you can do your own comments and let us know what you think.
And especially if you have more questions for Gabi, I think that the easiest way to ask them after this session is over is on the ClimateX website.
Yeah.
And we would love to hear from you.
We just got one more. MIT's Media Lab reported on analysis of big data from people's photographs from smartphones in Spain over a year to see where the landscapes turn green or brown. That is so cool. I love that stuff. I think we need more of that, and we need more comments like that. So please keep telling us about everything you know that's going on, because that inspires more ideas. How green is the Charles River? What is the current phytoplankton bloom going on in there? And does it mean my dog can't go swimming in it? Things like that we could really crowdsource. So yeah, please keep the ideas coming. Oh great, Kurt just posted the link to the group that we want people to post things in, so that's really helpful.
So if you're hearing this but not on the Hangout page, it is climatex.mit.edu/groups/climate-science.
Perfect. And I'll be in that kind of group to help answer questions and pose more questions and keep thinking about climate science. And I think the next big thing for everyone here listening to think about is the next week we have this session on citizen science, which is going to be like a really good connection to this, I think. I think people already have ideas about citizen science, and this is going to be an expansion on that topic.
And it's going to be another EAPS graduate,
Yep.
Britta
Britta.
Voss, and Media Lab graduate Jeff Warren. And so we'll be talking about how to make citizens not just data collectors but active participants. And definitely in the long term, we want to be moving towards challenge proposals. So if you guys have challenges that you would like the world to address, we're going to start collecting them, and we will move into something called the Climate Collab that also is run out of MIT, the climatecollab.org. And
that's what ClimateX came out of, right? It came
so ClimateX was a winning challenge in the Climate Collab. And we very much see ourselves as an incubator for more mature challenges in the Climate Collab. So whatever ideas you have, feed them into the ClimateX discussion space on the website, and we'll see how we can improve them and turn them into proposals that others can start addressing in the Climate Collab.
I think we're going to start wrapping up now. Yeah,
I think so.
So thank you all so much for participating. It was really cool to see. We had a Google Doc populating of what people were talking about. So seeing some of that was awesome, and the chats. And I really hope we can keep connecting on this ClimateX website. And definitely join us next week on Wednesday for the citizen science session with Britta and Jeff.
So it's Wednesday, not Monday, because next week on Monday is a holiday in the United States. I also want to say that do follow us on Twitter at ClimateX_MIT, and as well like us on Facebook at ClimateX_MIT. And thank you so much. It was wonderful, and we will see you in about a week.